Tom wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his cargo ship through the purple clouds of planet Viridian. The old transport vessel groaned under the weight of medical supplies bound for the remote trading post. He had been flying cargo runs for 8 years now, moving everything from food to medicine across the outer rim planets. It was honest work, though not very exciting. The communication system crackled to life. Cargo ship Lucky Star, this is Viridian Control. You are cleared to land at Port 7. Be advised, there is a diplomatic ceremony happening today. Please follow the marked flight path. Copy that, Viridian Control, Tom replied, adjusting his course. He had heard about the big peace talks happening on Viridian. The native Viridian Empire was finally making a formal trade agreement with the Galactic Trade Federation. It was supposed to be a historic day. As Tom landed his ship at the busy spaceport, he could see crowds of beings from different planets gathering near the ceremonial plaza. Viridians were easy to spot with their tall, scaled bodies and proud bearing. They moved with the grace of natural warriors, their reptilian features sharp and intelligent. Among them walked various alien species, blue-skinned Altarians, furry Kethans, and even a few other humans. Tom finished unloading his medical supplies at the warehouse when a Viridian official approached him. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with dark green scales and wearing ceremonial robes. Human pilot, the official said in perfect galactic standard, I am Commander Zek. The ceremony begins soon. As representatives of the human colonies, you are invited to witness this historic event. Tom looked down at his simple pilot uniform. I think there's been a mistake. I'm just a cargo pilot. I don't represent anyone important. Commander Zek tilted his head. All humans are welcome. Queen Kira herself requested that any human present be invited to attend. Please, follow me. Not wanting to be rude, Tom followed the commander through the crowded streets toward the ceremonial plaza. The buildings around them were made of smooth stone, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories of ancient Viridian history. The architecture was both beautiful and imposing, reflecting the proud nature of the people who built it. The ceremonial plaza was enormous, capable of holding thousands of beings. A raised platform stood at the center, decorated with banners showing the symbols of both the Viridian Empire and the Galactic Trade Federation. Security guards from multiple species patrolled the area, but Tom noticed they kept a respectful distance from the Viridian honor guards, who stood like statues in their ceremonial armor. The Viridians take ceremony very seriously, Commander Zek explained as they found seats in the section reserved for off-world guests. Their culture values honor and tradition above all else. Today marks the first time in 300 years that they have opened formal trade with the galaxy. Tom watched as various dignitaries took their places on the platform. Federation officials in their crisp uniforms sat across from Viridian nobles in flowing robes. The crowd grew quiet as trumpets sounded from the palace steps. Queen Kira appeared, and Tom understood immediately why the Viridians followed her with such devotion. She moved with quiet confidence, her emerald scales catching the light of Viridian's twin suns. Unlike the ornate dress of her nobles, she wore simple but elegant robes that allowed for easy movement. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing as they swept across the crowd. She was younger than Tom had expected, probably close to his own age of 32 in human years. But there was an ancient wisdom in the way she carried herself, as if the weight of ruling an entire empire had given her strength rather than wearing her down. Queen Kira has ruled for 10 years, Commander Zek whispered. She took the throne when her father died defending our borders from raiders. She ended that war within 6 months using strategy instead of just sending more warriors to die. The ceremony began with traditional Viridian music, played on instruments that sounded like a mix between drums and wind chimes. Federation Ambassador Ross, a tall human woman with gray hair, stood to speak first. Today represents a new chapter in galactic relations, the ambassador began. The Viridian Empire brings to our Federation not just rich trading opportunities, but a culture of honor and strength that will make us all better. Polite applause filled the plaza as the ambassador continued speaking about trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Tom found his attention wandering to the crowd around him. He spotted several groups that seemed to keep to themselves, including one cluster of Viridians who looked unhappy about the proceedings. When Ambassador Ross finished, Queen Kira rose to address the gathering. Her voice carried clearly across the plaza without amplification, another mark of Viridian physical capabilities. People of the galaxy, she began, today we choose cooperation over isolation. For too long, the Viridian Empire has stood alone among the stars. But isolation breeds weakness, while unity creates strength. Together, we will build something greater than any of us could achieve alone. Tom found himself impressed by her words. Many planetary rulers spoke about unity while only caring about what they could gain for themselves. Queen Kira seemed different, genuinely committed to making life better for her people and their new allies. However, the Queen continued, let it be known that the Viridian Empire enters this alliance as equals, not as subjects. We bring our own strength, our own honor, and our own way of life to this partnership. The crowd erupted in approving cheers, especially from the Viridian sections. Tom clapped along, caught up in the energy of the moment. It was rare to see such genuine enthusiasm at these diplomatic events, which were usually stiff and formal. Queen Kira smiled at the response and raised her hand for quiet. Now, let us speak of the specific agreements that will govern our new relationship. As she began detailing trade routes and defense commitments, Tom noticed movement in his peripheral vision. One of the unhappy-looking Viridians was slowly making his way through the crowd, getting closer to the platform. Something about his movement seemed wrong, too purposeful, too focused. The Viridian reached into his robes and Tom caught a flash of metal. In that instant, everything became clear. The alien was carrying a weapon, and he was positioning himself for a clear shot at the Queen. Tom's heart raced as he realized what was about to happen. He looked around for security, but the guards were all facing outward, watching for threats from outside the plaza. None of them had noticed the assassin working his way through the crowd. The assassin pulled out what looked like a crossbow, much smaller than the traditional versions but clearly designed to be deadly at close range. He was now less than 50 feet from the platform, hidden among the crowd of ceremony attendees. Tom stood up, his mind racing. Should he shout a warning? But that might cause a panic that could hurt innocent people. Should he try to alert security? By the time he reached a guard and explained the situation, it would be too late. The assassin raised his weapon, taking aim at Queen Kira, who continued speaking, completely unaware of the danger. Tom could see that the crossbow bolt had some kind of dark coating on its tip, poison, most likely. Without thinking, Tom jumped over the barrier separating the guest section from the ceremonial area. He ran toward the platform, pushing through surprised spectators who had no idea what was happening. "Look out!" he shouted as loud as he could. Queen Kira heard him and turned in his direction, confusion on her face. At the same moment, the assassin fired his crossbow. The poisoned bolt flew through the air with deadly accuracy, aimed directly at the Queen's heart. Time seemed to slow down for Tom. He could see the bolt spinning as it flew toward its target. Queen Kira was beginning to react, but Viridians, despite their physical strength, were not known for quick reflexes. She would never be able to dodge in time. Tom threw himself forward in a desperate dive. His hand shot out and closed around the crossbow bolt just inches before it would have struck the Queen. The pointed tip pierced his palm and the poison coating burned like acid, but he held on tight. The plaza erupted in chaos. Security guards rushed toward the assassin, who was already trying to disappear back into the crowd. Viridian honor guards surrounded their Queen, weapons drawn, while Federation security began evacuating the VIP section. Tom collapsed to his knees, still holding the broken bolt. The poison was spreading up his arm, making his vision blur and his heart race irregularly. He could hear shouting all around him, but it seemed to come from very far away. Queen Kira appeared beside him, having pushed past her own guards. She caught him as he started to fall, supporting his weight with surprising strength. "Get the healers," she commanded. "Now." "Your Majesty, you should move to safety," one of her guards protested. "This human just saved my life," she replied firmly. "His safety is now my responsibility." Tom tried to speak but found his mouth wasn't working properly. The Viridian poison was much stronger than anything humans normally encountered. He could feel his nervous system starting to shut down. "Stay with me," Queen Kira said, her voice cutting through the fog in his mind. "You are not allowed to die after doing something so brave." The last thing Tom remembered before losing consciousness was the feeling of being lifted and carried at great speed. Even through the poison, he could tell that Queen Kira was personally carrying him to safety. He woke up 3 days later in what was clearly a medical facility, though unlike any hospital he had ever seen. The walls were covered in living vines that glowed softly, providing both light and what seemed to be medical monitoring. A Viridian healer sat nearby, checking readings on a device that looked like a crystal sculpture. "Ah, you wake," the healer said in accented galactic standard. "I am Dr. Nem. You have been very sick, but you are better now." Tom tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as dizziness washed over him. "Where am I?" "Royal Medical Center," Dr. Nem replied. "Queen Kira brought you here personally. Very unusual, but she insisted you receive our best care." "The Queen, is she safe?" "Thanks to you, yes. The assassin has been captured. He was part of a faction that opposed the trade agreement. They believed contact with outsiders would weaken Viridian culture." Dr. Nem moved closer, examining Tom's eyes with a small light. "You are very lucky to be alive. The poison on that bolt was Kethera, it kills most species in minutes. But human biology is strange. Your immune system fought the poison in ways we have never seen." "I don't feel very lucky," Tom said, examining his bandaged hand. "More like very stupid. Who catches arrows with their bare hands?" "Heroes do," said a familiar voice from the doorway. Tom looked up to see Queen Kira entering the medical bay. She had changed from her ceremonial robes into simple traveling clothes, but her presence still filled the room with quiet authority. "Your Majesty," Tom started, trying again to sit up. "Stay down," she ordered gently. "You are still recovering." She turned to the healer. "Dr. Nem, how is our patient?" "Remarkable recovery," the doctor replied. "Human resilience is quite impressive. The poison that would have killed you in seconds merely made him very sick for a few days." Queen Kira nodded and moved to stand beside Tom's bed. "I have been waiting to speak with you. To thank you properly." "No thanks needed," Tom said. "Anyone would have done the same thing." "No," Queen Kira replied firmly, "they would not have. My own guards froze when they saw the attack. You, a stranger to our world, threw yourself into danger to protect someone you had never even spoken to. Why?" Tom thought about the question. "I guess because it was the right thing to do. You were in danger. I could help. So I did." Queen Kira stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. "The right thing to do," she repeated slowly. Such simple words, but so few beings live by them. "It really wasn't that complicated," Tom insisted. "I saw someone about to hurt you. I stopped them. End of story." "For you, perhaps," Queen Kira said. "But for the Viridian Empire, this is just the beginning of your story." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Rest well, Tom of the cargo ship Lucky Star. When you are recovered, we have much to discuss." After she left, Dr. Nem chuckled softly while checking Tom's vital signs. "I think you do not understand what you have done, human." "I stopped an assassin," Tom replied. "Seems pretty straightforward to me." "You saved the life of Queen Kira," the healer corrected. "In Viridian culture, this creates what we call Kethmira, a life debt that can only be repaid in specific ways." "Like what ways?" Dr. Nem's eyes twinkled with what might have been amusement. That, my friend, is something only the Queen can explain to you. Tom spent the next 2 days recovering his strength and learning more about Viridian culture from the medical staff. He discovered that the planet had dozens of different climates, from tropical forests to frozen mountains. The Viridians themselves were divided into various clans, each with their own traditions, but all united under Queen Kira's rule. He also learned that his rescue of the Queen had become major news across the galaxy. Apparently, footage of a human cargo pilot catching a poisoned arrow to save an alien queen was the kind of story that captured public imagination. The incident was being called everything from proof of human heroism to the bravest act in galactic history. I still don't understand what the big deal is, Tom told Dr. Nem as he prepared to be discharged. I just reacted without thinking. Perhaps that is exactly why it matters so much, the healer replied. True courage is not the absence of fear, but right action despite fear. You had no time to think, so you acted from your heart. That tells us who you really are. As Tom gathered his few possessions, Queen Kira entered the medical bay one final time. She looked more formal now, wearing robes that marked her royal status. Tom, she said, you are well enough to travel? Yes, Your Majesty. I should probably get back to my ship and my regular cargo runs. Actually, Queen Kira said, I was hoping you would stay on Viridian for a few more days. There is something important we need to discuss. What kind of something? Queen Kira smiled, but there was something serious behind her eyes. Come to the palace tomorrow evening. All will be explained then. Tom wanted to ask more questions, but the Queen was already leaving. Dr. Nem handed him a communicator and directions to the guest quarters where he would be staying. Enjoy your rest, the healer said. Tomorrow, your simple life as a cargo pilot may become much more complicated. That evening, as Tom sat in the comfortable guest quarters overlooking the Viridian capital city, he wondered what the Queen wanted to discuss. Through his window, he could see the twin moons rising over the alien landscape, casting everything in silver light. Whatever Queen Kira had to say, Tom had a feeling it was going to change his life in ways he could never have imagined when he first landed on this strange and wonderful world. Tom spent a restless night in the guest quarters, wondering what Queen Kira wanted to discuss. He had expected to be back in space by now, delivering his next cargo shipment to the mining colonies near the Zirian Nebula. Instead, he found himself in the heart of the Viridian Empire, about to have an audience with one of the most powerful rulers in this sector of the galaxy. The next evening, a Viridian escort arrived to bring him to the palace. Commander Zek, who had first invited him to the ceremony, waited outside with an ornate transport vehicle. Good evening, Tom, the commander said with what passed for a smile among his species. The Queen is waiting for you in the throne chamber. This is quite an honor, she rarely holds formal audiences anymore. Formal audience? Tom asked as they traveled through the city streets. I thought this was just going to be a conversation. Commander Zek's scaled features showed surprise. You truly do not understand what has happened, do you? Tom, you saved the life of our Queen. In Viridian culture, this creates bonds that cannot be broken or ignored. The palace was even more impressive up close than it had appeared from Tom's guest quarters. Massive stone walls rose hundreds of feet into the air, carved with the history of the Viridian people. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at attention as their transport passed through the main gates. Inside, the palace corridors were wide enough for several Viridians to walk side by side. Murals depicting ancient battles and ceremonies covered the walls, lit by crystals that gave off a warm, natural light. Tom felt very small and very human as they walked deeper into the heart of Viridian power. The throne chamber is just ahead, Commander Zek said. Remember, when you enter, bow once to show respect. The Queen will tell you when to speak. The massive doors to the throne chamber swung open silently. Inside, Tom found himself in a room that could have held his entire cargo ship. The ceiling stretched up into shadows, supported by columns carved to look like ancient trees. At the far end of the chamber, Queen Kira sat on a throne made of polished stone and precious metals. But she was not alone. The entire Viridian High Council was present, along with several beings Tom recognized as Federation officials. Ambassador Ross stood near the throne, looking both excited and nervous. This was definitely not the private conversation Tom had expected. "Tom of the cargo ship Lucky Star," Queen Kira's voice carried clearly across the vast chamber. "Approach the throne." Tom walked across the polished floor, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He could feel dozens of alien eyes watching his every move. When he reached the appropriate distance, he bowed as Commander Zek had instructed. "Rise, Tom," Queen Kira commanded. She stood up from her throne, and Tom noticed she was wearing the most elaborate robes he had seen yet. This was clearly an important ceremony of some kind. 3 days ago, the Queen began, "This human threw himself into mortal danger to preserve my life. He asked for nothing in return. He expected no reward. He acted purely from courage and compassion." Murmurs of agreement came from some parts of the assembled crowd, though Tom noticed that not everyone looked pleased. Several Viridian nobles seemed distinctly unhappy about something. "According to the ancient laws of our people," Queen Kira continued, "any being who saves the monarch's life with complete disregard for their own safety earns the right to the greatest honor our empire can bestow." Tom began to get a very bad feeling about where this was heading. "Therefore," Queen Kira said, her voice rising to fill every corner of the chamber, "I formally offer you, Tom of the cargo ship Lucky Star, the honor of joining your life to mine in royal marriage. As my husband, you would become co-ruler of the Viridian Empire and defender of our people." The chamber erupted in noise. Some Viridians cheered approval while others shouted objections. The Federation officials looked thrilled. Tom could practically see them calculating the political advantages of having a human married to the Viridian Queen. Ambassador Ross actually clapped her hands together in delight. Tom, meanwhile, felt like someone had just hit him in the head with an asteroid. "I'm sorry," he said, though he wasn't sure anyone could hear him over the commotion. "Could you repeat that?" Queen Kira raised her hand for silence, and the chamber immediately quieted. "I have proposed marriage, Tom. In your culture, I believe the proper response is either acceptance or refusal." Tom's mind raced. Marriage? To an alien queen? He was a cargo pilot from a small human colony who had never even been to Earth. He fixed broken cargo haulers and delivered medical supplies to remote outposts. He was nobody special. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I'm deeply honored by your offer. But surely there's been some kind of mistake. I'm not royalty. I'm not even a citizen of the Viridian Empire. I'm just a pilot." "Just a pilot who risked his life to save mine," Queen Kira replied. "Character matters more than birth, Tom. Courage matters more than politics." One of the Viridian nobles stepped forward, his scales dark with what Tom was learning to recognize as anger. "Your Majesty, with respect, this human knows nothing of our ways. He is weak, small, and completely unsuited to rule alongside a Viridian queen." "High Counselor Vex," Queen Kira said coldly, "are you questioning my judgment?" "I am questioning the wisdom of binding our royal line to an alien who cannot even defend himself in combat," Vex replied. "What happens when our enemies see that we are ruled by weakness?" Ambassador Ross stepped forward before Tom could respond. "If I may, Your Majesty, the Galactic Federation would be delighted to support this union. The political implications alone would strengthen ties between our peoples for generations." "This is not about politics," Queen Kira said firmly. "This is about honor, and Tom has proven his honor beyond question." Tom felt like he was watching a game where everyone knew the rules except him. "Could I possibly have a moment to think about this?" he asked. "Of course," Queen Kira replied. "This is not a decision to be made lightly. High Counselor Vex raises valid concerns about your readiness to rule. Therefore, I propose a trial period." She turned to address the full assembly. "Tom will remain on Viridian for 30 days. During that time, he will be given challenges that will test his fitness to stand beside me as ruler. If he succeeds in proving himself worthy, the marriage will proceed. If he fails, he will return to his ship with our gratitude and friendship, but no further obligation. Vex looked pleased with this compromise. What manner of challenges, Your Majesty? He will be given problems that have troubled our empire, Queen Kira said. Real issues that require real solutions. If he can demonstrate wisdom and capability in addressing these concerns, it will prove that humans can contribute more than just bravery to our partnership. Tom felt a spark of hope. This was better than trying to fight Viridian warriors or navigate royal court politics. Problem solving was something he actually knew how to do. I accept the trial period, Tom said. What kind of problems are we talking about? Queen Kira smiled for the first time since the ceremony began. The first challenge involves our outer colonies. 3 of our mining worlds have been losing workers to better opportunities in Federation space. Production has dropped by 40%, and traditional solutions have failed. You have 1 week to propose a plan that will solve this crisis. High Counselor Vex sneered. A cargo pilot solving economic problems that our best minds cannot address. This should be entertaining. Actually, Tom said, his confidence growing, I might know something about this. I've been to a lot of mining colonies. Mind if I visit these worlds and talk to the workers directly? Queen Kira nodded approvingly. By all means. Commander Zek will provide transportation and any resources you require. The ceremony ended with Tom in a daze. As the officials filed out, Queen Kira approached him personally. You seem overwhelmed, she observed. A little bit, Tom admitted. This morning I was a cargo pilot. Tonight I'm apparently training to be a king. It's a big adjustment. Tell me honestly, Queen Kira said. Are you angry about this situation? Do you feel trapped? Tom considered the question carefully. I'm confused and nervous, he said finally. But not angry. You're trying to do right by your people and your traditions. I can respect that, even if I don't fully understand it yet. And what do you think of my proposal? She asked. Not the political aspects, I mean the personal ones. Could you imagine sharing your life with someone like me? Tom looked at her carefully. Queen Kira was obviously intelligent, strong, and genuinely cared about her people. She had shown him kindness when she could have simply thanked him and sent him away. I think you're remarkable, he said honestly. But I also think you deserve someone who can be your equal, not just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Perhaps, Queen Kira said, the next 30 days will help us both figure out what kind of person you really are. Tom spent the next morning getting briefed on the mining colony situation. The 3 affected worlds, Viridian Prime, New Scales, and Deep Rock, had been losing workers steadily for 2 years. The Federation offered higher wages and better living conditions on their mining operations, so Viridian workers were leaving in large numbers. The traditional Viridian response had been to increase wages and threaten penalties for workers who broke their contracts early. Neither approach was working, and the colonies were becoming ghost towns. Have you actually been to any of these colonies? Tom asked Commander Zek as they prepared to depart for Viridian Prime. The High Council sent inspectors last year, Zek replied. They found the working conditions acceptable and the wages competitive. But have you talked to the workers themselves? Ask them why they're leaving. Commander Zek looked puzzled. The inspectors filed comprehensive reports. Tom was beginning to understand part of the problem. Sometimes you have to actually listen to people instead of just checking boxes on a report. The flight to Viridian Prime took 6 hours. During the journey, Tom studied everything he could find about the colony's operations. The numbers looked good on paper: decent wages, reasonable safety standards, adequate housing. But something was driving people away. Viridian Prime turned out to be exactly what Tom had expected from a mining colony, a collection of functional buildings built around massive excavation sites. The place felt tired, like a machine that was slowly breaking down. The colony administrator, a middle-aged Viridian named Supervisor Grix, met them at the landing pad. "Commander Zek, welcome back to Viridian Prime. How can we assist you?" "This is Tom," Zek said. "He's here to investigate the worker shortage problem." Supervisor Grix looked at Tom skeptically. "A human? What does a human know about mining?" "Probably not much," Tom admitted. "But I know about workers, and I know about being far from home. Mind if I talk to some of your people?" The next several hours were educational. Tom spoke with miners, engineers, cafeteria workers, and maintenance staff. He listened to their complaints and suggestions, and gradually began to understand the real problems. The work was hard and dangerous, but Viridians were tough and didn't mind that. The pay was actually quite good compared to other colonies. The real issues were completely different. First, the colonies had no recreational facilities. Workers finished their shifts and had nothing to do except eat and sleep. There were no places to socialize, no entertainment, no way to feel connected to the larger Viridian culture they were working to support. Second, the colonies operated on rigid schedules that never varied. Workers got the same food, did the same jobs, and followed the same routines every day. There was no flexibility, no opportunity for advancement, and no sense that individual contributions mattered. Third, and most important, the workers felt forgotten by the empire they served. No one from the government ever visited except inspectors who checked safety equipment and filed reports. The workers felt like they were just resources to be used up, not citizens whose welfare mattered. "So the Federation colonies treat you better?" Tom asked a group of miners during their break. "They pay attention to us," one of the miners replied. "They have gaming centers, sports leagues, cultural events. They rotate job assignments so we're not doing the same thing forever. And when they have problems, they ask us what we think instead of just sending inspectors." Tom was starting to see the solution, but he needed to visit all 3 colonies to be sure. New Scales and Deep Rock confirmed his suspicions. The problems were the same everywhere, good working conditions but terrible quality of life. On the flight back to the capital, Tom outlined his plan to Commander Zek. "The workers aren't leaving for more money," Tom explained. "They're leaving because they feel like the Empire doesn't care about them as people. The Federation colonies make them feel valued and connected to something larger than just their daily work." "So what do you propose?" Zek asked. "We make the colonies into real communities instead of just work camps," Tom said. "Recreation facilities, cultural programs, regular visits from government officials. We give workers opportunities to advance and contribute ideas for improving operations. We make them feel like citizens instead of employees." "That sounds expensive," Zek observed. "Less expensive than losing 40% of your workforce," Tom pointed out. "And the improvements will boost morale, which should increase productivity enough to pay for the changes." Tom spent the rest of the week developing a detailed proposal. He researched costs, drew up construction plans, and created a timeline for implementation. When he presented the plan to Queen Kira and the High Council, even High Counselor Vex seemed impressed. "This is a comprehensive approach," Queen Kira said after reviewing the documents. "But will it actually work?" "The principle is simple," Tom replied. "Treat people well and they'll do good work. Treat them like numbers on a report and they'll find somewhere else to go." The Federation understood this, but somehow the Viridian Empire forgot. "And you learned this from your experience as a cargo pilot?" Vex asked suspiciously. "I learned it from being human," Tom said. "We're social creatures. We need to feel connected to our communities and valued for our contributions. I imagine Viridians are the same way." Queen Kira approved the plan immediately and allocated funding to begin implementation. The success surprised everyone, including Tom. Within weeks, workers were returning to the colonies, and productivity began climbing back to previous levels. "Your first challenge is complete," Queen Kira told Tom as they walked through the palace gardens. The results speak for themselves. What's the second challenge? Tom asked. A diplomatic crisis, she replied. Our neighbors, the Kethan Republic, claim we've been stealing mining rights in disputed territory. Traditional negotiations have failed, and both sides are preparing for possible military action. Can you find a peaceful solution? Tom spent several days studying the dispute. The problem involved a mineral-rich asteroid field that both the Viridians and the Kethans claimed under different interpretation of a centuries-old treaty. Each side had legitimate legal arguments, but neither was willing to compromise. Tom's solution was characteristically human. Instead of fighting over who owned the asteroids, why not share them? He proposed a joint mining operation where both species would work together, splitting the profits and sharing the technology. The arrangement would create jobs for both peoples and establish a model for future cooperation. The negotiations were difficult, but Tom's approach of focusing on mutual benefit rather than historical claims eventually won over both sides. The agreement was signed 3 weeks later, and both Queen Kira and the Kethan leadership praised Tom's innovative thinking. 2 challenges, 2 successes, Queen Kira said as they celebrated the diplomatic breakthrough. Are you beginning to feel more confident about the possibility of ruling? Tom had been thinking about this question a lot. I'm starting to understand that ruling isn't about having all the answers, he said. It's about listening to people and helping them find solutions to their problems. A wise observation, Queen Kira replied. What else have you learned? That being human might actually be useful here, Tom said. Viridians are strong and honorable and proud, which are wonderful qualities. But sometimes you need someone who thinks differently, who approaches problems from unexpected angles. The third and final challenge came with only 3 days left in the trial period. A plague was affecting livestock on several agricultural worlds, threatening food shortages throughout the empire. Viridian scientists had been unable to identify the cause or find a cure. Tom's background as a cargo pilot proved surprisingly helpful. He had delivered veterinary supplies to dozens of agricultural colonies and had picked up quite a bit of knowledge about livestock diseases. More importantly, he knew which questions to ask. While the Viridian scientists focused on complex biological analysis, Tom investigated the timing and pattern of the outbreaks. He discovered that the plague always appeared first near spaceports, and only affected animals that had been fed grain from off-world suppliers. The solution was embarrassingly simple: contaminated feed was spreading the disease. By switching to locally grown grain and treating affected animals with standard medications, the plague was eliminated within days. I feel somewhat foolish, admitted Dr. Kess, the lead Viridian scientist. We were searching for exotic pathogens when the answer was right in front of us. Sometimes fresh eyes see things that expert eyes miss, Tom replied diplomatically. That evening, Queen Kira invited Tom to join her for a private dinner in her personal chambers. It was the first time they had been alone together since the formal proposal ceremony. 30 days ago, you were a simple cargo pilot, she said as they ate. Now you have solved 3 major problems that troubled our empire for months or years. How do you explain this transformation? I don't think I've changed at all, Tom replied. I'm still the same person who caught that arrow. But I've learned that the skills that make someone a good pilot, problem solving, listening to people, staying calm under pressure, are also useful for other kinds of challenges. And what about the marriage proposal? Queen Kira asked. The trial period is almost over. How do you feel about the prospect of becoming my husband and co-ruler? Tom set down his fork and looked at her seriously. I think you're an amazing person, he said. You're brilliant, you care deeply about your people, and you've been incredibly patient with a confused human who got thrust into a situation way over his head. I sense a but coming, Queen Kira said with a slight smile. But I need to know that this isn't just about honor codes and political advantages, Tom said. If we're going to spend our lives together, it should be because we genuinely care about each other, not just because I happen to catch an arrow. Queen Kira was quiet for a long moment. When I first made the proposal, she said finally, it was indeed about honor and tradition. You had earned the right to the highest reward our culture could offer. And now? Tom asked. Now I have watched you work with my people, solve our problems, and treat everyone you meet with respect and kindness, she said. I have seen that you approach challenges not with arrogance or force, but with genuine desire to help others. These are qualities I admire greatly. So you're saying you actually like me? Tom asked with a grin. I am saying that I have come to care for you, Queen Kira replied. The question now is whether you have come to care for me. Tom reached across the table and took her scaled hand in his human one. I have, he said. I never expected to fall for an alien queen, but somewhere between the mining colonies and the diplomatic negotiations, I realized I was looking forward to our conversations more than anything else in my day. Then you accept my proposal? She asked. I accept, Tom said. With the understanding that I'm still going to make mistakes and ask stupid questions and probably embarrass you at formal ceremonies. I would expect nothing less from my human husband, Queen Kira said warmly. The wedding took place 1 month later, with representatives from dozens of worlds attending the ceremony. Tom wore traditional Viridian royal robes, which felt strange but looked surprisingly good on him. Queen Kira looked radiant in her ceremonial wedding attire. During the vows, Tom promised to serve the Viridian people with honor and wisdom. Queen Kira promised to value his counsel and support his efforts to make life better for all citizens of the Empire. High Counselor Vex, who had initially opposed the marriage, now spoke in support of the union. This human has proven that strength comes in many forms, he told the assembled crowd. His courage saved our queen, and his wisdom has benefited our empire. After the ceremony, as Tom and Queen Kira, now his wife, stood together greeting their guests, Ambassador Ross approached them with a wide smile. Congratulations to both of you, she said. This marriage represents a new chapter in human-Viridian relations. Actually, Tom said, I think it represents something simpler than that. Sometimes the best partnerships happen when people from different backgrounds choose to work together and care about each other. Queen Kira squeezed his hand. Spoken like a true co-ruler, she said. As the celebration continued around them, Tom reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. 6 weeks ago, he had been a nobody pilot making routine cargo deliveries. Now he was married to a queen and helping to rule an interstellar empire. The funny thing was, he still felt like the same person inside. He was just a human who tried to do the right thing and treat people with kindness. Apparently, that was enough to make him worthy of standing beside the most powerful leader in this part of the galaxy. Tom looked at his new wife and smiled. Sometimes the greatest adventures started with the simplest acts of courage. He was eager to see what challenges they would face together.